Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Walk Show podcast. This is your host, Walker Neer. Up front, I'd like to mention you can follow me at Twitter at The Walk Show Pod, Instagram or Facebook at The Walk Show, or you can always email me at walker@thewalkshowpodcast.com. I'd also ask you to take a moment to like, rate, subscribe, comment, whatever your app lets you do that you listen to your podcast through. It helps the show just be more discoverable for other people when they search. Also, if you're listening to the show, I ask that you tell a friend, share what you enjoyed about it with someone else, and see if we can get some more ears on board for the Walk Show here. I also like to shout out my other podcast, Pick Up Your Sticks, which is a gaming podcast that I host with Brett Lindley. Brett and I talk about video games exclusively on that podcast, so it's a little different in format than the Walk Show. But it's similar to the Walk Show in that we try and have, thoughtful long-form conversation. So it's not just news updates or just reviews or our, takes on the latest thing in the industry necessarily. We do talk about modern video gaming topics, but we also talk about, just what's important to us and what's been important to us throughout our lives and why, and really kind of get into, the significance that gaming can have in life. Also, I'd like to mention the Ozarks Food Harvest. Again, as I've stated before, I don't actually have any official relationship with Ozarks Food Harvest. However, Ozarks Food Harvest is a food bank here in Southwest Missouri that's a really efficiently run organization and an organization that serves a lot of meals to a lot of people in need in this local area. I highly recommend that if you're in the Southwest Missouri area, that you find a way to either, donate or volunteer some time to Ozarks Food Harvest to help out. It's a mission that I think is universal. It's trying to help people not be hungry, especially kids, but even adults who have made bad choices and maybe even consciously made bad decisions. We're well off enough in this country as a society that we can help them out and we can help people. And to be clear, not every adult who's in need is there because of a product of their own decision. So I don't mean that either. The reason I said that is just that I constantly think about kids, because with kids, it's not their fault and they didn't pick it. But even if someone did consciously make a decision that made them be in a spot where they need help, we should still offer that help. Before I talk about the topic of today's show, I also just want to say, and this is the last podcast of 2019. I started podcasting back in January of 2019 with the encouragement of some friends, and the help of Misha Zarins specifically. He really helped me get this show off the ground. But really everyone in my life at one point or another has been a tremendous help to me, whether it be encouraging me or listening to the show and giving me feedback, or talking to me about ideas about the show, or just whatever the case is, being a guest on the show. But to everyone who's listened to the show, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure for me to have started both this and Pick Up Your Sticks. And I really just can't say thanks enough, because it's so much fun for me to do these. And that does take me into the topic. I've learned a lot this year from doing the podcast, both personally and about what it looks like to make a podcast and how to edit stuff, right? So technical things, but then also just, lessons in life, and whether that be, lessons about how to collaborate with someone, working with Misha, doing the teamwork there, working with Brett on the Pick Up Your Sticks podcast, whether it be learning stuff from the life coaches and the different, more philosophical or personal development type conversations that we've had here on the Walk Show, learning about music from all sorts of people. There's just a lot to learn and take in this year, and it's been a true pleasure. And that's what I want to talk about on today's episode is the biggest lesson that I think I've learned this year. And it's hard to boil it down And I don't mean to diminish any other lessons in favor of the one that I'm going to share today, but yeah, I think there's one lesson that, at least for me, was the most personally significant, and one that yeah, I found personally really profound. All that being said, we'll get on to the episode. As always, the music for today's show is provided by Misha Zarin, so thank you so much, Misha, and let's get on to the show. Earlier this year, I did an episode on the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it was a book that I had never read before, even though it's a very famous book and I've known about it for a long time. I hadn't read it before because I thought that it was a book about how to trick people or manipulate people, or, I don't know, the title, How to Win Friends and Influence People, just sounds kind of shady or something, right? So I was always a little skeptical of it, and the skepticism was unwarranted because I didn't actually explore what the book was about other than just knowing the title and then saying no to it, right? But when I read the book, it's actually just a book about empathy. It's just an entire guide about how to be empathetic to other people. And to be clear, just up front, empathy and sympathy are different in that sympathy is where you share emotionally, feeling-wise, where someone else is, and empathy is where you intellectually understand where that person is coming from. So you can see how they got to where they are. You understand them. But it doesn't mean that you take on the same feelings that they're having, right? But just to clarify, that's what I mean when I talk about empathy. Is how to win friends and influence people is not that if someone else is sad, you have to share in their sadness. It's that you if you want to connect with them, you need to understand how they got to there. And if they feel like you understand, which you can achieve by listening to them, then that will go a long way in building that relationship with that person. And that's not a trick, right? And it's not a manipulation. It's actually just, as the listener, doing the work of actually listening and paying attention and really thinking about what they're saying and understanding that person. And then after I read that book, which if any of you who have not listened, you should go back and listen to the episode that I did on it. It's got the same name, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But after that, I started reading all these personal development books, which you could argue that How to Win Friends and Influence People is also a personal development book. It's targeted at how to increase your capacity or skill set in a given area. But I started reading other books about, like Discipline Equals Freedom, The Power of Habit, and then I started seeing a counselor, and the counselor suggested to me this book called Feeling Good, which I still hope to talk about on the Walk Show at some point next year. I haven't finished it yet, though, so I kind of want to complete it. And it's not a page turner in the one sense. It's not a page turner in so much as that it's a book about how to deal with depression and anxiety with using cognitive behavioral therapy. But it is a page turner in the sense that it is filled with just tremendous information. It's a book that was written in the 80s, and I wish I would have found it a long time ago, because it would have been a nice guide for me a long time ago. Not just in how to deal with my own feelings and my own emotional states, but also just in empathy, right? In helping to understand what other people are feeling like and what other people are dealing with, and what effective strategies I can have to help those people and interact with those people who are struggling with depression or anxiety. So those books, though, are more about, like, how, again, personal development, how to achieve better things, or build new habits, or have discipline, or change your behaviors to change the way that you feel, right? And so in going into that, while How to Win Friends and Influence People jumped out as a book about empathy, because it's very explicitly a book about having empathy with other people, I didn't think that these other books and this other stuff that I've been doing was about empathy. Really, it didn't jump out to me as that. And what I said, in the introduction here was that what I wanted to talk about is the biggest lesson I've learned in 2019, and that lesson is actually empathy. But instead of empathy for others, and to be clear, that's still important, so it's not an either or. But for me, the biggest thing that I've learned in 2019 is actually about having empathy for myself, and the importance of an individual being able to have empathy for themselves. And why I say that, it's something I've talked about with, Brochure Man, right? Where it's this character that's actually just me still. But the idea that whenever I have bad ideas, it's not just a bad idea by itself. It's a bad idea with an entire brochure of justifications for why it's okay for me to do that bad idea, right? And the result of that's been a cycle in my life for a long time where I want to do X, and then Brochure Man shows up with Y and has a whole bunch of justifications. And so then I do Y, and I don't do X that I said I wanted to do. And then I feel bad, right? Then I feel guilty about it. And I've gone through a long cycle of shaming myself a lot and telling myself I'm a monster. And it was because, to me, it was always, that was what was logical, right? It was that whenever you... There's all this stuff, like I played sports a lot as a kid, right? And so whenever you play sports, something that you hear all the time is that it doesn't matter if you win or lose. It matters that you tried as hard as you could. And so I kind of had that mindset with goals or whatever. So let's say the goal I've talked about a lot on this show is like, I want to lose weight. Great. Well, then the lesson that I took from sports kind of is well, if you want to lose weight, let's say I want to lose 20 pounds, but I only lose 10 pounds. But I worked as hard as I could in whatever time period I had, and 10 pounds was just as much as I could produce. That was the best I could do. Well, great. Well, then I should feel good about that, and I shouldn't feel bad at all about not achieving my goal because maybe the goal was bad or something, right? Or maybe I didn't understand what was really possible in the time frame I had allotted. But regardless, I gave it my all, and I was a good soldier in that fight, and so because of that, I deserve to feel proud of myself still, even though I came up short of my stated goal. However, what that doesn't account for is, if let's say I want to lose 20 pounds and I lose 10 pounds, but I know that's because let's say I gave myself, let's say I gave myself 4 months to lose 20 pounds. But I know that for that entire 4 months, every other week, I went to McDonald's and just had a huge meal there. Or I went to a Chinese buffet and just pigged out. Or I ate a carton of ice cream, or whatever the case is. I really didn't try as hard as I could, right? At least on paper. Like, I really didn't do everything that I should have done in order to try and lose as much weight as I could have. Well, so because of that, how can I say that I feel proud of myself for trying as hard as I could? Because I didn't, right? I didn't try as hard as I could. So it's like I understood the idea of having empathy for myself, or being nice to myself still, right? After a failure happened that was like an accident almost, or that was just, the product of misunderstanding. But what I wasn't ever able to understand was to be nice to myself if I failed, and the reason I failed was because I consciously chose to fail. Because I consciously made the decision that I knew was wrong. I wasn't confused, I wasn't tricked, I wasn't drunk. No one hit me with the chloroform rag over the mouth and then I woke up in the McDonald's. That didn't happen. I got in my car and I drove there, right? Or I was at the store and I stopped my shopping cart in front of the ice cream section and filled that puppy up. And those are the kinds of decisions, these self-sabotaging kinds of decisions that I've made throughout my life. And when those would happen, I'm not Catholic, but I should have been, right? Because even though I didn't physically do it, in my head, I am lashing myself. I don't know if you've seen those priests that have like the whips where they go over their shoulder and lash themselves on the back as penance. I didn't actually do that, but emotionally and mentally in my own head, that's what I was doing, right? And the lesson that I actually have kind of, and I'm still mastering it. So as I say every time, I'm not coming to you from the mountaintop. It's a lesson that I'm still internalizing and that I'm still learning daily. But it's the lesson of empathy for myself, and the lesson of even though I got in the car and drove to the McDonald's, I still have to have empathy for myself, and I still have to be kind and be loving to myself. And the reason that you have to isn't just because, I mean, it is because it feels better, right? And it puts you in a better mental state. But it's also because if you don't do that and you go back into the being mean, at least, and I'm saying you, I'm talking about me. If I go back into the state of being mean to myself, it doesn't move the needle. And I can just prove that from a very objective, high level position, which is simply that when it comes, we'll just use the topic of weight loss specifically. When it comes to weight loss and me, it's something I've struggled with for more than a decade. And it's something that I've been super mean to myself about for more than a decade, and I've not succeeded. So clearly, what I'm doing, those inputs are not producing the output I want. So just from the highest level possible, you can just, on paper, the tactics I've been using have not worked, right? Now, I didn't really understand that this was playing into it, that this idea of how I treat myself and how I talk to myself was playing directly into my ability to be successful. I now see that, but either way, that's just true, is that it hasn't worked so far. 2 + 2 is 4 every single time, and so for a long time, I've been doing 2 + 2 and been like, where's the 5 at? Where's this 5? Well, it's not there. And what I've learned that the biggest thing I've had to change, which is part of the reason that I started calling my bad ideas brochure man, is to try and humanize it a little bit and to try and make it not just this evil monster that doesn't get spoken about and that is just my own ball of shame that I hide with. Instead, it's like, let's put it out in the open, let's admit it, let's talk about it, let's be open about it, let's recognize it, and then let's forgive it, right? I'm going to forgive myself for this stuff. Something that really struck me in the Feeling Good book, that book on cognitive behavioral therapy I was talking about, is he explicitly addresses in that how if you let's say you have a goal like I do, I want to lose weight, and then I eat ice cream, okay? Well, now my goal has been hindered by that, right? So I've got a problem. In the fact that I ate the ice cream is a problem in so much as that it is a challenge to me accomplishing my goal. Okay. So that's already true. It's already one problem that I now have. Well, now if I go and make myself feel as horrible as I can and tell myself that I'm this, fat person that's always going to be this way, and this is the way reason I'm this way, and just all these mean, negative self-talk things I can say. Well, I'm just bargain shopping for problems, because now I've got a second problem. And the second problem is now I have reduced confidence in myself and reduced belief in myself, and I feel bad, and I'm not better equipped to face my challenges, and I'm not better equipped to solve my problems, and I'm not better equipped to deal with the problem of eating the ice cream. Instead, all of the opposite of that is true. Now I feel worse. Now I feel less motivated. Now I'm less equipped. Now I'm not dealing with the problem of the ice cream. Instead, I'm dealing with the problem of how bad I feel, right? And it doesn't solve the ice cream problem. Like the ice cream problem, and this is actually an example he uses in the Feeling Good book, so I'll take it away from myself for a moment and put it back in the story that's in this book. He's talking about a story he has with his patient where this guy eats ice cream and then makes himself out to be this monster. And the doctor says to him, have you, is this the first, why, the doctor says to him, well, why did you eat the ice cream? He says that to the patient who's overeaten. And the patient says, well, I was bored. And the doctor says, oh, is this the first time that you've ever eaten ice cream when you were bored? And the patient says, no, I've done that for 20 years. It's the reason that I am in the condition that I'm in. It's the reason I have this weight to lose to begin with. It's because this is the long-standing habit that's caused this. And the doctor says, well, have you had the opportunity to build a new habit, to build a new routine for whenever you feel bored, to replace the eating of the ice cream? And the patient says, no, I haven't done that. And the doctor says, well, then why do you feel guilty for doing something that you've done for 20 years? This idea that you shouldn't have the ice cream when you're bored doesn't actually make logical sense if you haven't done the work to actually replace that habit with a new one. So until you've done that, of course you're going to eat the ice cream, because that's what you do. That is your habit. That is the routine. And you are a human being who is subject to habits and routines. You're not a monster for that. You're just a person. And so the point is that, you know, if dealing with the overeating is the thing I need to solve, well, then really the thing that needs to be done is to look at and understand, why is the overeating happening? What is the trigger for it? What feeling does it bring? What is it satisfying? And then working to find something to replace that habit with, and finding something to replace that routine with. Because in the end, I'm going back to myself, and I'm going to get bored, right? If that's the reason. I'm not going to be able to avoid boredom forever. So instead of trying to hedge against that, instead, I need to plan for when I get bored, what do I do instead that's not eating, right? And whenever you are mean to yourself and whenever you beat yourself up, you're not giving your mental energy to figuring out what I was just talking about. Instead, you're figuring out how awful you feel. And so this self-shaming, again, I don't know, it resonated a lot with me, this idea again that you're bargain shopping, man. You're getting 2-for-1 deals. You're cutting coupons for your problems, which sucks super bad. And then it starts to compound. And in my life, what's happened is I start compounding these problems. I am awesome at finding great deals on problems. And then what happens is I get overwhelmed, and then I just stop trying to solve them, right? I just start letting stuff snowball, and I just say that things that were problems aren't anymore because it's too overwhelming and I can't do it. And it's not moving the needle. It's not making me happier. It's just creating a new cycle. And so, I don't know if I've rambled too much here, but my point in all of this, again, is just, you've got to love yourself and you've got to forgive yourself. And I know those things are cliches, and I know a lot of the stuff that I've talked about in these last 6 months is cliches, but that's because it's just true. It's just accurate. And I just cannot stress enough how important it is to have empathy for yourself, because you can work on all sorts of other stuff, but if you, at the end of the day, can't look at yourself in the mirror, right? If you, at the end of the day, don't know how to love yourself, then I think the other things, the other challenges that you have and other problems that you try and solve, I think they're going to come back over and over and over again. And I know they do for me. And that's why I think that's true for others, right? Because whenever you don't, loving yourself and knowing how to be kind to yourself and knowing how to forgive yourself and knowing how to have empathy for yourself and understand where you're coming from and understand that you're not a villain in your own life and that you're not a monster in your own life and that you're not your thoughts and you're not your behaviors and that those things are things that you can change, right? You can change all of that and you can make it whatever you want. All of that is how you find more peace and more happiness. And happiness is not some end goal that you just achieve one day and you have it. But it's, I think, for me at least, when I think about it, it's more just about being at peace with things and having harmony with things. And all of that starts with having empathy for yourself and loving yourself. So I just, if you're someone that already does this, then that already is in a good spot with having empathy for yourself, and that's awesome. That's awesome, and you're ahead of the game, and you've got nowhere to go but up. But if you're someone that finds yourself telling yourself that you're a bad person, or that you're a monster, or that you're a fuck up, or that you're whatever negative thing you come up with, whatever phrasing I've had some creative names for myself, so you might too. I think that you're going to find that it's a struggle for a long time until you can deal with that, because otherwise you just fill in that shopping cart up with way too many problems, and they don't help you solve each other, right? Feeling guilty and ashamed and miserable doesn't help you do something, doesn't help you accomplish things. And it seems like it would. It feels like accountability. It feels like you're doing the just right thing by holding yourself accountable. But it's not. It's not the thing that helps, and it's not the thing that gets you where you want to go. Anyway, I think I've probably said said too much about that there. Again, didn't mean to ramble. It's just a really important topic to me, and it's a really important lesson for me, and I think it's something that everyone needs to hear. And I had never, again, that's why it opened up the way I did at the beginning of this episode, because I had understood what it meant to forgive yourself if there was an accident. I didn't understand what it was to forgive myself when there wasn't an accident and when the problems happened on purpose. So yeah, I hope that you love yourself, and I hope that if you don't know how to do that you learn. And I hope that, if you don't know who to reach out to, hit me up, email me, walker@thewalkshowpodcast.com, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is. Message me. I'll give you some books to read. I'll have a conversation with you. I'm not a counselor or a coach, though. There are professionals out there that are really, really, really good. I see a counselor now and a life coach and love both. They're both excellent. And I talk to them about different things, and they've helped me tremendously with understanding myself and just kind of learning how to navigate all this stuff. So I really encourage you to do something like that as well. Anyway, happy 2019. Thank you again for all the podcast listens. Have a happy New Year's Eve, and get out there and love yourself. right, guys. Well, that is going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much again for all of the listens here in 2019. I'm eager to get out into 2020 and see what the year will bring. Thank you, as always, again to Misha Zarins for the music for the Walk Show, and thanks again for all the help, especially at the front of the show there. It really meant a lot, and it really got us to where we are today, man. So it's awesome. All right, guys. Have a great week.